Another thing that we've needed to do is to write to a file. So notice that we could do that we could write to an output file. Let's try that. So if we have OF stream, and I'm just going to call it out, and to get it in the right location, I'm going to go up 2 directories, and I'm going to call it dice out underscore out.txt. And now this is an output file stream, so if it doesn't exist, the system will create it automatically for us, so we can just use it. And now what we can do is we can loop through this array, and we'll use a for loop. And here it's j equals 0 to j less than, and how much do we want to go? Here we want to use index again, so we're just using the valid data and not the default ones that were created when we created the array. And we just simply output to the file. And what do we want to output? So it really depends. So if we were writing a report, then we might want to do this where we're calling that write method. So let's do that. So let's do, we're going to do that, we need to go through the array. So my dice array, and we'll do index j dot write dice. Right? That's what we want to do. We want to write dice. We need to tell it where to write it. Well, we want to write it to our output file, and we've called that out. So we'll write out. Up here we called it using cout, and here we're going to call it without. And then we want an end L. So how do we get that out? We want it to write not to cout, we want to write it to our output file. And now let's run it and see what happens when we try to write to a file. And we go here, it created the file, dice out, and there they are. We wrote them out. So this would be like a dice report. Right? What about if we wanted to write just the data? So we could do that. So let's create another file. So we'll create one for data and one for the other one. So this again is an OF stream object, and I'll call it out file. And again, we need to dot up, and let's do dice data .txt. And now we're going to use that same for loop. And this for loop, again, we want it to be we want to go from 0 to how many are valid. So that's going to be in our index variable. And now we want to print out, if we want it to be like the data that we read from, what is it? It is first the number of sides and then the value. So we need to write it that same way. So now we'll do out file, and we'll write the number of sides. How do we get that? We go to the element in the array that we're working with, dot get number of sides, right? Get number of sides, because that's what we want to print out. And then that file had a space, so we want to put a space in there. Then we want to read print out my dice. Again, the exact same index, because we're still in that same element. Now we want to print the get value, right? First the sides, then the value, and then after this in the file is an end L. So now let's run it and see what we get there. So our value dice out is the report. And then let's look at the other one, which is dice data. And there's the dice data. And we were able to print that data out to look like a file where we're just storing the data. So even though we're working with a programmer-defined data type, we can create arrays, we can use individual elements, we can access all the methods that we created, and we can read from a file and store those values in an array. We can read from a file and create an object. We can use those objects and write them out to a file. So all of the things that we can do with built-in data types, we can build with data types that we create. So pretty cool, all the things we can do when we create our very own programmer-defined data types.